Hey guys, welcome to today's video of Beyond the Surface with Caleb. Today's video is part of the emotion series that I have on my channel. In this video, it's going to talk about fear, the emotion of fear. Fear is within all of us, to different levels, to different intensities, to different durations. Different situations can evoke fear in different people. Just trying to get all settled in here because I'm feeling a little bit of fear just making this video. Alright. So, what is fear? Why do we experience it? From an evolutionary standpoint, people have said that fear is what kept our species alive. Fear is what helped us navigate animals that we didn't understand, plants that we didn't know how to interact with, if they were okay to eat, if they were not okay to eat, if different groups of people were safe or not safe. And it's really baked into our psyche and our DNA of being a human. Our amygdala is the oldest part of our brain, and that's where fear is. At the same time, I'm not a doctor. I don't have any degrees or certifications, but it doesn't change the fact that that is. And different people feel different fear for different reasons. Even when it comes down to biological gender, there's been studies that said that women tend to feel more fear than men. And just for simplicity of this video, I'm just going to say male and female. And there's different reasons too. Women in general tend to be more in touch with their emotions. And at least in American society, it's socially acceptable for women to be more sensitive and express more emotions and be more affectionate. Whereas for males in American society in general, because everybody's different, but on average, it's seen as not a good thing for males to be expressing their emotions as much as women are able to. And you could say that's not fair. That's not right. That's just where we're at right now in 2026. But I do have some optimism, especially with the rise of the internet. There's a lot more acceptance around men getting more in touch with their feminine side and women getting more in touch with their masculine side. Because you have both. You have both masculine and feminine within you. Now, me saying that goes against a lot of people that are very identified with rationality and science. And what I'm saying with the whole masculine and feminine, having both within you, can sound a little woo-woo and out there, and pseudoscience. From a new age spirituality mindset, it could sound like what I'm saying is right on. And I think there's a little bit of truth in both of those. I make these videos, and the way I emote and the stuff I talk about can confuse people of, well, it sounds like he's using new age spirituality concepts, but he's also using scientific and rational concepts. How does that work? And that's one of the things that brings me fear. Sometimes I don't understand the own paradoxes within my personality. Just to kind of ground this whole fear thing into like my personal experience for a little bit. When I look at situations, I sometimes have a difficult time with just being emotional or logical. Because in different situations, I try to look at both as equally and as balanced as I can. And it's difficult sometimes. Or to have a gut feeling about something, to have an intuitive feeling about something, and then also use my logic and rational mind to assess if it's reliable or not for the given situation or decision that I have to make. Even trying to find a way to express all this and package it in a way, or a better word is to translate it in a way that's digestible and also practical and productive for you guys that are watching and listening. Like so far with these videos, I think about the overall thing that I want to say in some of these. And then I just go off that. Whatever happens in the moment happens. And sometimes that brings fear for me. So, for example, fear can show up in different situations for different people. I've heard many women talk about how when they walk across the parking lot, they can feel scared for their life. A guy can walk past that same parking lot and not feel fear. And these are very general points. I'm trying to make these points as simple as possible, but they are very complex. Because there is some women that don't have that fear. There's some men that do have that fear. Even where we're at with politics, there's a lot of fear on both sides. But if we're not willing to at least hear the other side, the fear is just going to continue because we fear what we don't understand. There's probably truths and falseness on both sides. There's probably good points and bad points on both sides. I fear that bringing too much into someone's awareness, giving them a different perspective, could ruin their life. But I also fear if I don't talk about the things that I am interested in, I fear that I'm wasting my life. So fear is such an interesting thing, I feel. And people could say, oh, in this video it sounds like you're just theorizing and philosophizing on fear, and that it just sounds like you're just going in circles. But I would say that that's partially true. It's partially true, yeah. In a sense, it is impractical and just a waste of time and just mental gymnastics. But also, too, I feel like there's some truth in it. We fear most what we don't understand. And so, from my opinion, even thinking about the different possibilities on how fear can show up and how it feels in the body and how it influences decisions and actions within myself and others, I feel like it gives me less fear. It makes me feel more comfortable. Well, at the same time, in a way, it is kind of impractical because fear is fear. It is what it is. And that's kind of like the tension of this, a big thing that we're seeing in America right now. And this is just my opinion among 8 billion opinions, so please keep that in mind, that my opinion is just my opinion. There's probably parts of it that's right, parts of it that's wrong. You have to discern for yourself. I just forgot what I was talking about. I always try to put that disclaimer in there because I feel like it's important. Fear. Sometimes fear is just, okay, I remember where I was going with this. So there's a tension between, in America, it seems, and that you have people that are identified with the New Age spirituality and love and light, and we're all one, and you should be kind to everybody, and then you have another group of people that feel like it's all about science and rationality, things you can prove. And I feel like these two mindsets are causing a lot of conflict. And from Integral Theory by Ken Wilber, it's thought of as stage orange and stage green, and how they're like fighting with each other. But the thing is like I have both within me. And I'm hesitant to talk about developmental models because I feel like it's more important to ground it in a way that's practical everyday life, instead of just saying this person's green and this person's orange in their decision making for this situation. It's more complex than that. You can have amber values when you're in one situation. You can have orange values when you're in another. You can have green values when you're in another. So you're just there's a whole bunch of colors on that model that you go through every day. And you may be wondering, well, how does this tie into fear? You're talking about models now. Developmental psychological models. What does that have to do with fear? I've noticed within myself that sometimes when I feel fear, I try to go deeply into models, psychological models, and science and rationality, instead of just sitting with fear, the emotion I'd be feeling at the moment. And I feel a little bit uncomfortable in this chair right now. But yeah, there's people in life that have learned so many things from fear. When someone loses their business, they can feel fear. When you lose a loved one, you can feel fear. You can learn a lot from those experiences. Even though I haven't had the losing a business experience, in a sense, it's still all similar, but the intensity and the duration is different. Sometimes if we're in a situation where we're just really stressed, whether it's a financial situation or a relational situation, sometimes fear just cuts through all the BS and just has you make a decision. Sometimes it's a bad decision. I would say, in my opinion, oftentimes it's a bad decision to make a decision out of fear. Sometimes it's a good decision. It depends. A person could say that all opinions are just a matter of perspective, that there's no truth in the world at all. But that also is a truth claim, that there's no truth. Even though it's paradoxical, it's still a claim. we do so many things to try to feel grounded, like we know stuff. And on one hand, it's necessary to function day to day. And on the other hand, it can stress us out. Because you can't go about life with a complete unknown, with no plan and no challenges. I don't feel like fear is any more or less important than any other emotion. I kind of think of different emotions as having being different tools for a given situation or a given task. But not in a way to manipulate somebody, to do them harm. Not in that way, but in a way of like authentically feeling what you feel in the moment, expressing it wisely the best you can, and trying to keep a win-win-win situation for everybody, for yourself, for the other person, and for the world. Whether that is defined as development along a spiral, or defined as development within a community, or growth within a community, or growth within a spiral. The mind is so tricky. If you ever just sit there and watch your mind, observe your mind like you do like many people do in meditation, if you take that meditation practice out into your daily life and you just observe your mind while you're doing stuff, it's like there's a commentary that just goes on in there. And oftentimes it's just making a story. And I don't mean this in the sense of hearing voices in your head. I just mean in thinking, how your internal dialogue works. And how repetitive it is, how repetitive your emotions are, the cycles that they go through, the things that trigger them. It's all a part of you trying to keep an identity together. Even me saying that can bring in fear if you're listening to this. And that's one of the things I try to do with these videos is, yes, I'm using spiritual concepts that you hear in spiritual communities. And yes, I'm using psychological concepts that you hear in science. Because I feel like both are necessary, because you're in a human body. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are very, very high in just being able to sit and be. And there's other people that are very, very high in intellectual rationalization. And I feel like both are necessary. And with this channel, like, I'm trying to integrate these different aspects of what it is to be a human being, emotional, psychological, spiritual. And I'm just sharing things that I've learned so far, with also the hope that people will comment on my videos and I get to hear their perspective. Doesn't mean that we have to agree or disagree on the comments, but at least have another perspective. Why not? And some people could say, it's all concepts. What's the sense? Your ego is making a story to ground yourself and to play the game of feeling above or below somebody. You're playing a drama where you're part of a role and you're talking to other people that are part of roles, and you're in this big play where I am on this camera saying that I'm a 34-year-old male who's half black and half white, and I have this identity of trying to integrate everything. And I try really hard to use a disclaimer of think for yourself. And that I sit here and I struggle with all these different things, but speaking about it out loud helps me understand it better. There's people out there that would say everything that I'm doing is just a game. And in one sense it is. It is me playing a role. It is me trying to orient myself in the world. It is me using concepts and doing mental gymnastics and exploring different perspectives and learning different things. It's true, that's what I'm doing. In this play of life where everyone else is playing a role too. But as long as you're in a human body, you have to play a role. I feel like it's more important on how compassionate are you while you're playing that role. What are your intentions? And it's not, I don't really feel like it's all that woo-woo and like out there, because you go to apply for a job and it says, this is your role. Your role is cashier. Your role is lawyer. Your role is being a judge. Your role is being a driver. You're playing a role. And you're trying very hard to be the best at that role. Does that mean that if you get to a point where you're aware that you're playing a role, that you just stop playing the role? No. You still have bills you have to pay. You still have responsibilities of taking care of other people and letting them take care of you. You're still responsible for setting boundaries and having respect for people. You're still responsible for all that stuff. The only difference is you realize now that it's a role, and you realize deeper and deeper levels on how much that is. And that can produce fear. And you might think, well, you can say all this, Caleb. But if you know all this stuff, doesn't that mean your life must be great and you don't have any struggles? No. As I'm sitting here making this video, I'm like moving around in my seat because I'm a little cold. And I can feel my nervous system tensing up because I didn't put sweatpants on and a sweatshirt before turning on the record button in the camera. I still have challenges. I still have bills I have to pay. And the thing is that sometimes having that awareness of my inner workings and even being able to express different things on this video, on this channel, if I'm being honest, there's sometimes I wish I didn't have that. It does bring more complexity. And you may think that, oh, if you're able to look at situations and human behavior and everything more complexly, then your life should be easier. Not necessarily. It also depends on temperament. If there's anything you're struggling with, how much pain you have in your body, what your diet is like, what's your effectiveness in handling, accepting, and working through emotions. There's so many factors. So just because some people might be more self-aware, some people might be more intellectually complex, some people might be more anything, doesn't mean they're better, doesn't mean they're worse. We all still have challenges. And that's not me, and you may not believe that. You may think that I'm just here saying all this as a way to be like, we're not better than another person ultimately. And then behind the scenes me saying, yeah, I'm better than everybody. And truly feel that, because I don't. There's times that I've noticed where I'll have that thought and that emotion of, oh, I'm better than this situation. But then when I look deeper, it's just fear. Just my mind trying to come up with a story to hide the fact that I don't feel seen. You know? All the advice and suggestions I give, I take them for myself too. Sometimes it takes me a while to see it, that I'm deceiving myself. Sometimes I'm totally unaware of something and someone brings it into my awareness and I was like, dang, that was a blind spot. Because just because I'm aware of this stuff doesn't mean that I instantly fix it, because I don't. It's still tough at times. And maybe that's just part of being human. Is like, I remember when I was a kid growing up, I would look at people and how they would interact and their behaviors, and I would think, this person's giving this other person advice, but they must be being a hypocrite because they're doing the same thing, but they don't admit that they're doing it. And I would think, is their advice even valid? Like, should we even listen to what they have to say? And I was just thinking that in my head because I've been into this type of stuff since I was really young. That made me appear weird and different and difficult to fit in, but that's just how my brain's wired. Could be nature, nurture, both. But that's just what is. And for you, you have a different wiring, and it's fear. Fear can just make that more difficult. And fear can be subtle, and fear can be on all different levels, just like all the other emotions. It can be psychological, emotional, and physical and spiritual. You can have the emotion of fear and have thought producing fears. You can have the emotion of fear and have an experience that people would say is like a spiritual experience, and you could feel fear. So you can have the emotion of fear, and it can, and often does, influences other levels of what makes you a human. I even have a fear of talking about this stuff because I haven't had practice. I haven't had practice on speaking about these different things out loud. Recently, within the past couple of months, within the past couple of years, I've been speaking about similar things as I do on these videos, a little bit here and there. And I've been surprised by some of the reactions. But I still feel fear around it. You may have something that, for example, you may have something that is completely obvious to most people that you're around, whether it's your personality quirk. Maybe you're really shy, maybe you're very social, maybe you're very sporty, like maybe you're very athletic, maybe you're very intellectual. Maybe you're considered shorter than average. Maybe you're considered taller than average in height. So it's like, and it's obvious to see by most people, and most people bring it to your attention, and you can feel fear by that, even though it's so obvious. And it might even be obvious to you, and you can still feel fear. Doesn't that sound like insane or crazy? Like, there's some things within our personality that no matter what happens, it's still going to be us. Now, there is probably some cases where someone goes through something very traumatic. They may be a completely different person for the rest of their life, but most people, there's parts of us that, whether it's emotional, psychological, or spiritual, that doesn't change no matter the situation. And of course, I don't want you just to believe me, but to find out for yourself if what I said is true or not. Like you may think that, and this is just me talking into a camera and hoping someone is learning something from my perspective or has something to provide me with their perspective. But people have told me since I was young that I'm like a very deep thinker and wise beyond my years, and oftentimes taken back of like, how does my mind work like that? And those are, oftentimes they mean that in the most sincere, genuine, compassionate way. And you may think, oh, that must mean that you must get a little bit of a boost, like, yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, shower me with compliments. You might think that's how I feel about it, but no. It makes me feel uncomfortable. It makes me feel too seen. It makes me feel fear. Will that change? Maybe. But that's just where I've been in that domain of my life. Would I give it back? No. I can't give it back. It's just my personality. It's just how my brain works. For you, or for you guys that are listening, and when I say guys, I mean guys and girls, males, females, anything in between. You're wired differently. There's things you're really good at. There's things you're really bad at. There's things that you don't understand why you're good at. There's things you don't understand why you're bad at. There's things you think you're good at, but you're terrible at. There's things that you think you're terrible at and you're actually good at. Same with me. And I just find it amazing. If we were all the same, I feel like life would be boring. If we were all the same, we might as well just talk to ourselves in the mirror. Like, hey, how are you doing? I'm doing good. I think that diversity in not only personality, but culture, perspective, age, gender, height differences, that makes life interesting because everyone has a different perspective. And in the deepest sense, it just feels like it's all one mind. We all have a perspective we're using our mind, and we each have different systems of thoughts. Some people have a system of a rational thought system. Some people have a spiritual thought system. Some people have a financial thought system. And these are all belief systems. Not just, you may think a religious belief system is the only thing that's a belief system. But no, there's a science belief system, a finance belief system, spiritual belief system, a technology belief system, a African American belief system, a Caucasian or white belief system, a Asian belief system, a Japanese belief system, a small belief system. People that are shorter than average, people that are taller than average, they have a belief system. What it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, what it is to be nice. We have all these different identities and they're all belief systems, but they're still practical and needed because we're human. And with that can also cause fear. You know, like trying to keep everything together, everything you identify with together. And then sometimes when it gets so stressful, you may have moments where you just start laughing and you look insane to the people around you. because for a moment you get a glimpse of how absurd it is to keep it all together, but how necessary it is too. And that's just part of a paradox of it all. I'm 34 years old. Am I closer to 35 a minute after the time I was born? Yeah. I'm 5'7". Are there days when I'm probably taller than exactly 5'7" or shorter? Yes. The body's always changing. When we interact with people, we're constantly changing our internal workings, our thought processes, our emotional reactions. We're always changing. So in a certain sense, yeah, there's a lot of things that are just fluid. But for the necessity of a community and society, and not only locally but globally, those things are necessary. But yeah, that's all I have for this video on fear. And have a good day, guys. Take care.